My husband confessed after 15 years of marriage. I love your sister. We've been together for 3 years. But I quietly made one phone call. An hour later, my sister opened the door and turned pale. My name is Rachel. Rachel Haynes. Well, Haynes Mercer. After 15 years of marriage to Daniel, we lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in Neatville, Illinois. The kind of house you see on real estate websites next to words like family ready and move-in condition. We had a golden retriever named Biscuit, a shared Netflix queue, and a Sunday morning ritual of coffee and the Tribune crossword. We had 2 kids, Mason, 12, and Lily, 9. We had, as far as I understood the word, a life. I worked as a senior compliance officer at a mid-sized financial firm downtown. Daniel was a structural engineer. We weren't flashy people. We weren't unhappy people. We were the unremarkable, comfortable kind of married that most couples quietly aspire to and rarely discuss at dinner parties because it doesn't make a good story. My sister, Claire, was 4 years younger than me and lived 20 minutes away in Oak Park. She'd been divorced for 3 years. Her ex-husband Greg had left her for a colleague, which had made Claire briefly sympathetic and then gradually someone who required a great deal of emotional management. She called often. She dropped by unannounced. She had opinions about my furniture, my parenting, my career choices, and my haircuts. I loved her the way you love a complicated piece of your own history. Not always comfortably, but without question. The first sign I dismissed as nothing came 18 months before everything fell apart. Daniel had started going to the gym on Saturday mornings, which was new but not alarming. What was slightly odd was that he'd shower there instead of at home. When I mentioned it casually, he said the locker rooms had better water pressure. I laughed. We moved on. Then came the phone. Daniel had always been relaxed about his phone. He'd leave it on the kitchen counter, forget it in the car, hand it to Mason to look something up. Sometime around the 2nd year, that changed. The phone went everywhere with him. Bathroom, garage, to bed, face down on the nightstand. I noticed the way you notice a piece of furniture has been moved slightly. Something is different, but you can't quite name it. Claire started being unavailable. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the accumulated small way that is only obvious in hindsight. Texts unanswered for half a day when she used to reply in minutes. Cancelled plans with thin excuses. A new vagueness about how she was spending her weekends. I'd assumed she was dating someone and didn't want to jinx it. I even felt a small sisterly warmth at the thought. The two of them had always gotten along. Claire came to our 4th of July cookouts. Daniel helped her move a couch once, drove her to the airport twice. They texted occasionally, the way your spouse and your sibling text, a group thread, a forwarded meme, nothing that required a second glance. Or so I'd believed. The evening everything changed was a Tuesday in March. The kids were at a school event. I'd come home early with a headache and was lying on the couch in the half-dark when Daniel walked in. He didn't notice me at first. He stood in the kitchen doorway looking at his phone with an expression I had never seen on his face in 15 years of marriage. Something private and soft and entirely not mine. He looked up. He saw me. And something shifted in his eyes. He sat down across from me in the armchair, not next to me on the couch where he usually sat. Across from me. The geography of it was the first signal my body understood before my mind did. Rachel, he said, there's something I have to tell you. I remember thinking with the bizarre clarity that sometimes arrives just before catastrophic news. He's been fired or he's sick. Something medical. I'm in love with Claire. He said it quietly like it was a fact he was reporting rather than a bomb he was dropping. We've been together for 3 years. I'm sorry. I'm telling you because it's not something I can keep hiding. The room didn't spin. My hands didn't shake. What happened was stranger than that. Everything became very still and very sharp, and I heard the refrigerator hum from the kitchen and Biscuit's nails on the hardwood upstairs. And I looked at my husband's face and understood with absolute clarity that the man sitting across from me was someone I did not in any meaningful sense know. 3 years 96 Saturday morning gym sessions. 3 years of Claire's new vagueness. 3 years of the phone face down on the nightstand. 3 years of being the only person in this family who wasn't in on it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I looked at him for a long moment and said very calmly, "Thank you for telling me." And then I picked up my phone and made a call. The call I made that night wasn't to Claire. It was to my friend Donna Prescott, who had been a family law attorney for 14 years and who had, by a coincidence that would soon feel more like Providence, handled her own sister's brutal divorce for years prior. She picked up on the second ring. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Not tomorrow. Tonight." She heard something in my voice that I hadn't yet fully heard myself. "I'll put the kettle on," she said. Daniel was still sitting in the armchair when I came downstairs with my coat. He looked at me with the expression of a man who expects a scene and is mildly confused that one hasn't materialized. "Where are you going?" "Out," I said. I drove to Donna's house in Elmhurst on autopilot, which is dangerous and which I don't recommend. What I remember of the drive is the green glow of traffic lights on wet asphalt and the radio playing something I couldn't name and the peculiar sensation of feeling nothing and everything simultaneously. Like standing in a room where all the walls have been removed, and the wind is coming from every direction at once. Donna's kitchen was warm. She sat me down and poured tea I didn't touch and listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, first question. Do you have a joint account?" That question did more to bring me back to earth than anything else could have. Because it was the right question. Not how are you feeling, which was unanswerable, but what is your exposure, which was something concrete. We had a joint checking account and a joint savings account. We had a mortgage in both names. We had two retirement accounts individually held and a joint brokerage account that Daniel managed. I knew the approximate numbers. I was a compliance officer. I understood financial instruments. The bitter irony was that I had trusted Daniel with our investment account because he'd expressed interest in managing it, and I'd thought generously stupidly that shared responsibility meant shared investment in our future. "Don't touch the accounts," Donna said. "Not yet. Document everything first." I sat in her kitchen until nearly midnight, and by the time I left, the grief had not diminished. It was still there, enormous and waiting. But alongside it, something else had taken shape. Not anger exactly, something colder than anger, something that required a spreadsheet. The losses I counted on the drive home were not only financial, though those were real enough. 15 years of building a life that had been, for at least 3 of them, partly fictional. 2 children who would now experience the particular damage of a fractured family. A relationship with my sister, my only sibling that was, as of that Tuesday evening in March. Over a self-image as a perceptive, intelligent woman who understood the people around her, which had just been comprehensively dismantled, and the fear. I want to be honest about the fear. Because I've heard women in my situation described afterward as warriors or forces of nature. And that framing, while flattering, erases the part where you sit in a parked car in your own driveway at midnight and shake. I was afraid of being alone at 41. I was afraid of what the divorce would do to Mason and Lily. I was afraid of the financial unknown. I was afraid of what my colleagues would think, my neighbors, my parents. My parents who adored Daniel and who would have to be told. But fear, I had learned from compliance work, is information. It tells you where the vulnerabilities are. And once you know where the vulnerabilities are, you can build protections around them. I went inside, checked on the children, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a yellow legal pad. I made 3 columns: assets, risks, actions. Required. I worked until 2 in the morning. By the time I went to bed in the guest room, the door locked. I had the beginning of a plan. The plan had several components. The first was documentation.